Welcome to the Cybersecurity Mentors podcast. Today, we are thrilled to be joined by one of the most respected names in the cybersecurity field, David Kennedy. David is the co-founder of Trusted Sec and Binary Defense. He's been a critical voice in cybersecurity, providing expertise and insights to everyone from Fortune 500 companies to government agencies, and he's contributed both in the technology side of things and just the mindset and what we see in modern cybersecurity. So, David, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, Steve, John, thanks so much for having me. A pleasure to be here.
Yeah, great to see you. We were catching up before we started, and I've been following Dave for a long time. Back in the IRC days, when I would send him questions about SET, like, "Hey, man, what if happens if I do this? What do we do here?" So cool to see you, just your career and entrepreneurship and all the cool things you've been doing.
Yeah, it's been such a cool journey. I mean, never would have thought, coming through school, high school specifically, and then getting into the military and the Marines and military intelligence, that I'd be doing this as a career. And, I think for me, cybersecurity is one of those things that, became more of a hobby and an interest for me. And so, kind of being able to be my hobby and my career and be able to build, successful businesses off of it has been a dream come true. Been very fortunate and blessed with that. And a lot of great folks along the way that have helped me and continue to help me every day. I have great teams here at both my companies, but just, the friends, mentors, things that I've done throughout my career, have been super instrumental to my success, and, try to obviously pay that back equally as well, and, help others and get others into cybersecurity and do as much as I possibly can to make this industry for everybody and share as much knowledge and opportunity and everything else. And it's just been an awesome ride, and I love it.
Yeah. And I've really seen you do that, like just continually give back throughout your whole career. We'll talk about some of those things. First off, I'm just curious, because I don't know, like, where did you grow up?
Yeah, so I grew born and raised in the suburbs of Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay.
So I'm still here today. I'm actually in Fair Lawn, Ohio. That's where Trusted Sec headquarters is at. If you ever get a chance to come to Cleveland for some reason, it is a beautiful city, but not a lot of folks come through Ohio for some reason. Cleveland, we got a really awesome headquarters here. We have one in Fairlawn, Ohio for Trusted Sec, and then one in Stowe, Ohio for Binary Defense. And our Fairlawn location has a training facility. It's got like a hacker mural on there, mural, hand-painted murals. And it's cool because there's like a console there. If you look at the binary, you can reassemble it, and it takes you to a CTF where you can hack Trusted Sec and win prizes. And nice. We have a lot of training centers down there. All of the monthly cybersecurity groups come here, like ISC Squared, Women in Cybersecurity, InfraGard, a bunch of others all come here to basically have their monthly events, which is cool. And then I'm a huge collector of Back to the Future stuff. So there's a Back to the Future museum. So I have, the original hoverboard that was used in the movie, the almanac, and a bunch of other props from the actual movie itself. So I have like a nice Back to the Future time machine type of thing. And I also own a DeLorean as well. So it's fully converted to the Back to the Future machines.
Wow.
Downstairs as well. So
that's awesome.
Dude, your office swag, your office apparel is next level. People are like, man, if my office was only like that.
It's so cool. Like, I literally made the office like a place that I'd want to go into, right? We have like a nap room. If you want to take a nap, it has like a massage chair in there. You can take a nap and get a massage in. We built a TARDIS from Doctor Who in the middle of the, it's a time machine, basically in the middle of the main floor. Really cool hacker spaces, free food and drinks and everything else here. Come in as you go. We don't have any set, hours you have to be at work, and don't have to come to work if you don't want to, but we try to make it, nice here for you. And so it's kind of cool to have, folks that are remote, but folks that come on site and get to see everybody and everything else. It's just kind of a neat place to work at. And, my room is, you can't see probably from the split screens, but I have a Proton pack back here. I have, some of the, I was a big Power Rangers fan when I was a kid growing up. So I have the original Black Rangers belt from used on the show. And I have
nice.
Val Kilmer's Batman belt, utility belt up there as well that was used in the movie. So, like to keep I'm a big computer nerd / 80s, 90s movie / TV show nerd.
Sorry, let me ask you about this. So I showed my son the Cybertruck and the Warhog. And I was like, dude, if you're gonna have a Cybertruck, you have to make it look like a Warhog.
Warhog, absolutely.
100%.
Well, it's funny. Yeah. I was on the fence of whether or not to get the Cybertruck or not, because there's like some negative reviews about it and other things. Yeah. And I'm like looking at it. I'm like, well, and I started diving down, and those negative reviews are just like it's honestly, the Cybertruck's the most amazing truck I've ever owned. Really? It's incredible. It's like getting into a spaceship every time you get into there, right? It's like this futuristic spaceship. And I was on the fence, and I'm like, well, I don't know. But then I saw the Halo skin. I'm like, oh my God, like, okay, like buy now, I lease cars, and my lease was up for my Dodge Ram. And I was like, okay, I'm going to get the Cybertruck. And so I put the order in, and then there's a company out of San Francisco that makes the wrap for it, the Halo wrap. It's from a company called SS Custom. So they shipped it here, and then I had a local company called Cleveland Wrap, which they're phenomenal. Love those folks, amazing folks there. Put the wrap on for me, and then they did the custom decals and the UNSC on it, and then United Nations Space Command.
Nice.
And so it's like I'm literally driving a Warthog, and then on Tesla they have a GitHub page for their light shows. And if you've never seen one of their light shows, it's you can go into like the console and you can hit a light show and it syncs up the music. And so I use their light show creator, and I synced it to the Halo light show, and the frunk opens up and closes, and
wow.
Has the whole light show going and everything. It's just and when you walk away from it, the whole vocal orchestra thing, like that Halo song, that goes away as my locking sound. I mean, it's crazy. It's so much fun, and it gets so many looks, and people are smiling and laughing, and that's the cool part. But I get thumbs up, and you get some people are like thumbs down, whatever, but it's definitely a head turner. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So is this your daily driver?
Yeah, that's my daily driver. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
That's awesome.
So drive it everywhere. It's funny. My two boys love it. My daughter is terrified. Like she's like, do not drive me to school in this, period. Ever.
With the sound. Then you're showing up with the sound on. Right?
So funny story about that. So I drive up, and I'm going to play the Halo song as she pulls up, just to kind of embarrass her. But then I looked at her face, and she was like not having it. Like, it was one of those days where I'm not messing with this. I didn't end up playing it because I had to look at death on her face at that point. So.
I've got 3 daughters. I know that face.
Yep, you know that face. My wife has given me that face many times, and my daughter gives me that face many times, and I know for a fact what I can get away with and what I can't get away with.
Exactly.
So I definitely did not play the song. So
okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
that's awesome. That's really cool. So another question we had for you is, how did you get into cybersecurity? And when you first started, was there anything that kind of drew you in?
Yeah. So I would say like 19, going back a little bit. So as a kid, I was really obsessed with computers. I love computers. Like, I remember when, I came from a lower middle working class family. We didn't have a lot of technology or things like that, or nice perks or things like that to have. Great, raised us great, amazing parents. And I attest a lot of my success to them. But in the 90s, I remember my parents got me a Teddy Ruxpin, and the first thing I did was tear the whole thing apart because I wanted to know how it worked. I got in trouble for it because hey, we can barely afford this Teddy Ruxpin.
Yeah,
but and I destroyed it. And I just destroyed it. So, but I always wanted to know how things work. That was like how my brain always just kind of was. And I was like, how are we going from like electricity to the wall to seeing each other on a screen? Like, how does that actually work? And I couldn't wrap my brain around it, I became more obsessed with that. And so I started tearing apart computers, building computers, really getting into programming at an early age. I was like 15 years old doing C++. And I wasn't really focused on security at that point in time. But there was a couple inspirational movies for me. Back to the Future 2, The Promise of Technology in the Future was a huge thing, hence me being a huge Back to the Future fan. And then the movie Hackers came out. And it was like, I think 1996. It was either 94 or 96. I think it was 96. Hackers came out, and I love the whole like free information, exploration, hacking. So I started like learning more and more about kind of the hacking scene and things like that. And I was really bad at high school. Like, I was like a DF student, and I had to go to summer school just to pass and graduate my senior. I didn't walk across the aisle because I was going to summer school just to pass, and I finally got my diploma. And I was like, well, school's not the right thing for me, so I'm going to go into the military. And I almost joined the Army. I was like almost like about to sign the dotted line in the Army, but they couldn't promise me my job, my MOS. And they also, like, the Army guy was like kind of disgruntled. I don't think he was really happy being in the Army. So I was like, well, I really want to go to a place where this guy doesn't really like what he even does. And so I walk in, I see these and I was kind of an overweight kid, I was like, kind of chunky and things like that. And, didn't exercise a lot. And I saw these like 4 buff Marines, dressed in Charlies walking out. And I'm like, whoa, those guys are badass. I want to be a Marine. And Marines would guarantee me my MOS. And I tested extremely high on the ASVAB score, the aptitude test that you go through the military. And they're like, you can basically pick whatever you want to. And I was like, well, intelligence sounds cool. And I'm like, yeah, you get a top secret government clearance. I'm like, oh man, maybe I can learn about aliens, they're UFOs.
JFK. Where's JFK?
it's a funny story. My buddy Sean, who's my best man at my wedding, one of my best friends of all time as a kid, and still is today. I called him up and I'm like, dude, I'm joining. Or I was speaking with him, like, dude, I'm joining the Marines. I'm going to Intel. Listen, if I call you and I just say yes and I hang up, there's aliens. All right. And I never called them, so I don't know. I don't know if there's aliens or not. But what was cool about Intel is I got to do a lot of early cyber warfare, forensics, things like that. And that's really when I started homing in on cybersecurity and really finding kind of my love and passion for it, and started getting involved in the IRC groups. The early offensive security folks, they were known more as remote exploit. At that time, they Mutz, the head of that started offensive security, was one of my early mentors, really helped kind of coach me along the way of where I should focus in. And I attest a lot of my success to Mutz. He was a really good mentor of mine. He's the one that's like, hey, you pick up Python, here's how you do this, how you do that. Real amazing individual. And there wasn't a lot of information out there. There wasn't a lot of schools, places to learn. You kind of had to explore on your own. The industry was so new. You had DEF CON that was just coming up on in Vegas, and it was small. You're talking maybe 1,000 people, maybe 500 people, at the 20,000, 30,000, whatever it is now today. And so very early on in the industry, cybersecurity was just getting established. And so I got to do a lot of that in the military. I did 2 tours in Iraq for intelligence-related missions, but mostly for cyber warfare activity, which was really neat. So I had a lot of training, a lot of experience, and really started homing in on that being my career and really having a lot of passion for it. And I can't talk a lot about what I did in the military, but I can tell you that I helped design, a multi-million-dollar system. I was essentially the lead on the system that built this multi-million-dollar system that was classified. And I was 21 years old at that time. And I was like, this is the coolest thing ever.
Wow.
I'm 21 years old and I'm building this super secret cool program, it does some cool stuff. And, it was really high speed, fascinating, really early on in its time. And then when I decided to get out, I knew that cybersecurity was where I was going to, land in the private sector.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mutz, I haven't followed, I think he's kind of moved on, or he's moved on to greener pastures, right? But back in the day, I would follow Mutz and stuff. How did you guys connect? Like what was that connection, and how did he take you under his wing? Cause always thought he was a cool guy.
Yeah. So, what was cool with remote exploit is like, so if you look at offensive security model today, which was like the try harder, right? That actually kind of birthed out of remote exploit. And it was a concept where like, and this is something that we don't teach very well today, I don't think, which is there's tutorials for everything, but there's not tutorials for everything that you're going to run into as an attacker, right?
Right.
So if you're on offense and defense, so, you're going to run into situations that you've never experienced before, and there's no tutorial on, and you have to figure out a way around a circumvention of techniques, or a way to get around a security control, or a creative way of bridging multiple things together that's not going to be on a book. And so the creativity aspect of cybersecurity is really important. So understanding how things work, hence where my brain goes, and being able to take that and break it down and get around that, and how those things work to circumvent it, right? And, early on in the remote exploit days, that was their try hardest thing was, hey, someone would come in and be like, hey, how do I get this, driver to work, to go into promiscuous mode and monitor mode to be able to do, PCAP captures? And there was, already 1,000 tutorials on it. I'd be like, did you even read any tutorials to try this? Well, no, I just want the answer. Well, no, try harder and come back if you run into issues, we teach you that. And so, I started my early days in IRC homing around that group and, learning on my own, learning from them. And, at the time, Mutz was creating a distribution called WAPix, which was a competitor to Auditor at that time. The Auditor's security distribution, so Linux distribution, which is now what we call Kali Linux. And so, I started helping a little bit with that and doing some work for Mutz on that. Like he would have certain tasks or things. Maybe he needs a driver patch or something to do. So I started getting more and more involved with the remote exploit team. Kind of helping out and becoming, part of the group, and eventually became an op in there, a moderator, and then kind of became part of the team. And, it took years, but Mutz was always like, even before he knew who I was, we developed a really great friendship together. He was always helpful, always answering questions, super smart individual, one of the smartest people I've ever met. And so, just a kind person. And then the people that he surrounded himself with was very much the same, right? So it was a community of people helping each other learn and explore things, and the try harder mentality of being able to dive into things that haven't been done before in that industry. And eventually I became, WAPix and IWAX became Backtrack Linux. which eventually became Cali Linux. So I was on the backtrack development team, helped with, maintaining packages, updating things. And I also helped with the migration of Milworm at the time to ExploitDB. So Stroke decided to get rid of, he didn't want to run Milworm anymore. And so I worked with Stroke to copy essentially Milworm's database over to ExploitDB. We redesigned ExploitDB, and I was part of the ExploitDB team. And so I just kind of became part of that group, early on before it ever became offensive security. And then Mutz decided to start offensive security. The training certifications, I helped with some of the aspects of that as well. So the reporting element there, I helped build the first report. They had to write for offensive security, and then kind of the reporting requirements. That was an important piece that, certs were missing was, hey, you could do all this cool technical analysis, but could you report it and actually communicate it? And so OffSec was really one of the first out there to, one, do the hands-on exploitation labs as your cert, but second, also to be able to have to write a report and get that graded to actually pass the test, which is really cool. So that's kind of how that all started.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I think some of that, like, lessons learned there are just helping others and being okay to ask for help, right? And seeking help.
That's so important. You hit it right in the head, John. Like, I learned so well from other people, and back and forth. It's reciprocal, there's so many brilliant people in this industry, and there's so many new people that are coming in this industry that are brilliant. I don't take anything I know for a great assault. Like, I'm always trying to learn things differently or do things better, more efficient. So it's that community aspect of this industry that I really love, and their openness and willingness to share, to collaborate, to help others. That's really what drove me into my lot of success and who I am today, was because of those folks that I met along the way.
Very cool.
So no, thank you for sharing that. So I think now, your experience in the military, you kind of talked a little bit about that. What was it like when you left the military and you're, I guess, going back into the civilian world, and how, like, kind of how was cybersecurity still a part of your life once you left the military?
Yeah, I attest a lot of my success to the Marine Corps too. The discipline, my life experiences, going to war, at an early age, you see things and experience things that no one else in this world typically has. And you get to see the most horrible situations to some of the craziest situations, to be part of an actual invasion of a war and to see an entire country, fall and crumble, that's a insane experience that puts life into perspective for you. And so, my outlook on life is that, like, every day that I am living as a gift, and I try to help others with that time that I have on this earth. And so I think, when I got out of the military, I didn't, cybersecurity again was still very, very young. And there was a couple of small consulting shops that were just kind of starting off, like InGuardians, for example. I ended up joining a company called Secure State. And it was a very small boutique company in Cleveland, Ohio. I think they had like 5 employees at the time. And, I joined as I came in, I think, as a staff consultant. And I remember it was interesting because I was so nervous because I hadn't worked in the private sector before. I didn't know the private sector at all. I never consulted before. I never spoke in front of an audience. I never spoke really in front of anything unless I was getting orders, taken. And I remember that when I was kind of in my, kind of like the last final stages, a few months before I left the military, they had Security State had an engagement for me to write these what are called MSBs, minimum security baselines, and it's like basically like a checklist of things you can do to secure or harden, your servers and infrastructure, things like that. And they're like, hey, I know you're not starting for like another month or so, but we're overbooked right now. Do you mind working on these things? I'm like, absolutely, sure, send it over. And I was so nervous because I wrote these CBT. I did so much like research, and built out these MSBs, and I was so nervous about sending it. I remember sitting in front of the the Outlook screen, getting ready to send this, all these MSBs that I worked on, and had no guidance whatsoever. I just, I had like literally a cover letter, and that was it. And so, I didn't have a template to go off of or anybody give me instructions, but I tried to do the best I could. And I remember I hit the send button, and a few hours later, I got a message back saying, "Oh my God, these are the best things I've ever seen before. This is amazing. Nice job." I'm like, "Whoa, okay, this is not going to be that bad." And so, got out and worked for that consulting company. Ended up going from a staff to a senior very quickly. Went from a senior to running the entire consulting practice and becoming one of the executive leaders in the team. Again, 21 years old, 22 years old. And so I was there for a few years, and then I transitioned well. I learned consulting, to me, honestly, is probably one of the most challenging and difficult things you can do, because you are continuously traveling. Typically, you have to learn completely different environments all the time and their problems, right? Complexities. Nothing's ever the same. You have to learn technologies that you've never seen before, and you have to be an expert in it somehow. And, you have to do all these different things. You have to speak in front of people. And so, I learned very quickly how to go into a situation, learn things at a rapid pace, learn from others, learn online, research things, and to become a subject matter expert in that short period of time to be able to do the assessment or work that I needed to do. And, on top of it, I started doing speaking engagements. I remember the very first talk I ever gave was at this local event here called the Information Security Summit. And it was more of a chief security officer type of summit, a higher level con. And I was definitely not a higher level type of person. I was very technical and still am, and I remember I gave a talk, and it was all technical on cracking web encryption at the time. And I was getting into like the bits and bytes and like packet injection. And I had like this access point set up, and all these people in the audience are like, what the hell is this dude doing? Like, oh my God, like this is crazy, and so, I started to learn the audience a bit more and give better, different presentations and things like that. I started speaking more and more and becoming more, acclimated to who my audience was and things like that, and learning from that. And then, eventually I decided to leave, and I became what was called a regional security officer or an RSO for Diebold, which is a Fortune 1000 company, manufactures ATM machines, and eventually became the chief security officer there, where I ran their entire security program. And so I was one of the youngest VPs in Diebold history. I was 28 years old and became their vice president and chief security officer of Diebold, which is cool. I was running a team of 55 people, global, and we did some amazing things there. And it's funny because, I think the consulting side is one perspective, and you can do a lot of things from consulting, but until you actually work for an organization, you have to interface with various business units and all the politics and the approvals and change control and all sort of stuff. You don't really know the level of effort that it takes to build a security program. And, one of the biggest keys to my success at Diebold was I was friends with everybody. I was friends with IT. I was friends with operations folks. When we would make decisions for security, it was joint collectively. I made sure it was communicated extremely well. I'd buy pizza and beer for the IT folks if I had to, if I messed something up, or, or they were working late at night for something I was doing. I was really focused on building relationships, and those relationships eventually led to my success there, building an amazing security program with an amazing team and getting the funding that I needed to do the right things. And I'll tell you a funny story. I'll tell you two funny stories. These stories are my favorite. So we were implementing this technology called ScanSafe, which eventually got acquired by Cisco. But ScanSafe, what was unique about them was my big focus at Diebold was, manufacturing company, right? Shop floor plants, things like that. So a lot of legacy. It's going to take a long time to secure that. So how can I, while I'm working on my vulnerability management program, asset classification, everything else, how do I secure as much as I possibly can more quickly so that all these other programs can kind of come into place? And I was looking very heavily at egress filtering. So how do I stop all outbound C2 communications, from happening? So getting initial access and then, establishing access through there. And most companies really hadn't focused on egress filtering at all. Like it was an open outbound. It still to this day is very, very similar. So you can get out, a lot of ports and protocols, 5321, 80, 443, 8080, whatever.
Right.
And so ScanSafe was interesting because if you had the ScanSafe agent on your computer, it would proxy chain up to whatever port you wanted to directly to the ScanSafe servers, do SSL termination. You'd break that connection, and then you can inspect the traffic, but also it would shut down all C2s. So my goal was to block all egress filtering across the entire organization, which if you know a Fortune 1000 company, that takes a long time, right? If you're going to block all ports and protocols, that's not an easy fix, right? But I had a lot of friends in IT, and I was like, listen, can we find some? So there's a thing called change control, right? So we followed a very specific change control process. We had a change advisory board. Change control board, all this other stuff. And was it ITIL? And and so we I knew it was gonna be a lengthy process. I had to go through approval. So I went to one of my network engineer buddies. I'm like, hey, can you find an RFC that has to deal with like anything protocols? And can we tuck these changes in here, make these sweeping changes across the entire organization, and which is gonna break inevitably the entire company probably. And my one buddy's like, nah, man, listen, there's not enough pizza and beer that's going to get me to do that. So I went to one of the more junior guys and I was like, hey, buddy,
come on.
like one of the new network engineer guys, they didn't know better.
Didn't know better. Yeah.
Didn't know better. And I'm like, hey, can we find an RFC that does these? He's like, yeah, but he's like, that's probably going to break stuff. I'm like, I know, but how long is it going to take to fix? He's like, oh, it'll fix quick, but it's going to break stuff. I'm like, okay, like just, I'll take the heat. I'll take the political blowback, but can you go and do this? He's like, sure. So we implemented ScanSafe literally in like a week, and we broke our entire manufacturing process for a day. But it wasn't bad because I knew the head of operations. Like I was good friends. I'm like, listen, man, we're trying to fix this right now. We'll get it. And it was totally cool. No political blowback, but we were one of the only companies that literally had no egress ports whatsoever. You couldn't get out 21, 22, 53, 80, 443. Like your shells just didn't work in our environment, period. And so like that one sweeping change gave us so much time and flexibility to kind of focus on a lot of the other efforts to make things work. So, it was a lot of fun, and you can get away with stuff. Like I remember one of my DEF CON talks, I gave a DEF CON talk at the Penn and Teller room, and it was like 6,000 people in the audience. Okay. 6,000 people in the audience watching me. Right. And I found this bug in SCCM that would allow you to patch SCCM so that it would patch your entire company with malware. So you could use the software deployment mechanisms with SCCM to deploy your C2s or your malware, whatever you want to do. So I was live on stage, and I patched our SCCM servers at our company, a global Fortune 1000 company, live on stage, and had 20,000 shells raining back with heavy metal. I had like a lighter and heavy metal. And there's like shells in the background flying around. I'm like, this is amazing.
My gosh.
Being able to do fun stuff like that. It's a hobby. It's fun. I'm trying to do the right thing no matter what. But you also got to kind of figure out like what you can kind of get away with to push security to a new kind of height within an organization. Politics, everything else. So I learned a lot throughout my career. How to work with people, how to liaison on people, how to make friends, and then ultimately, have their back no matter what, and really be successful with it.
Yeah, just a couple of things there. I was just making notes. So standing out, I think people get hung up in, it doesn't take a lot to stand out, right? If you do that, when you're talking about I forgot what you call them, but the reports that you sent back, if you do the extra effort to put the effort in and actually care about what you're submitting to put out there, people get it and they're like, wow, this is amazing, because it doesn't take much. Unfortunately, it doesn't take much to really stand out because you care and you put that effort in. So that was one thing.
Everything I've always done, if you ask my wife, anything, if I get into something, I never just go in a little bit. I am all in on everything, like no matter what it is. Like I'm 130% into whatever that is. So like health and fitness, 1,000% into that, right? I got into airsoft, and I'm like, I got combat gear now with gas blowback guns and tracers and everything else, and I'm like, shooting these little kids with airsoft BBs, that have never been in the military before.
They're scared to death. They're like, oh my gosh.
Whatever I'm in, I go, all in on it. And it's the same thing with cybersecurity, and that's why. If you want to be successful coming into cybersecurity, give it everything. Like, and I'm not saying, don't sacrifice, your life, your family, your health. You got to have that, right? But make cybersecurity like your hobby, things you like to do, and go all in on it. And that spark is what gets people the success in this industry. Like you mentioned the minimum security baselines. Like if I was on a customer gig, and let's just say, in consulting, I might be running 2 projects at the same time, and maybe I only had 40 hours on one engagement. Well, if I wasn't done with my engagement, I would work at night and not document my hours to make sure that I did the quality of work that it needed to be done to make sure that customer felt good with the work that I did. And I did everything I possibly could to make that the best. Right. And, I was always the top consultant billable wise. I'd run like 170% utilization, which is crazy. And I'm not saying do that again. The burnout's a real thing, but I could handle it. And I was trying to make a name for myself in my career. And at the same time, I was on the Exploit DB team. I was writing the social engineer toolkit, speaking all these conferences. I just went all in on it, and good things happen. And keeping humble, learning from others, helping others. I'm a huge advocate that there's this energy that we all have, and that energy can be negative energy, it can be neutral energy, it can be positive energy. And I'm a firm believer that if you live your life in a positive energy sense of that, of helping others, doing good things for other people, that good energy comes back to you as well. And so, that's
Absolutely.
Really the biggest thing. It's just good energy good karma creates good karma. And that's how I've always really tried to run my career is always being thankful for the folks, people taking time out of my day, if even I'm busy, to speak to folks, to mentor folks, to do whatever I possibly can to help somebody out that's in need. That's just always been my motto, and it's always worked for me.
Yeah. I think too, having fun, right? Obviously, you're talking about things
Lots of
and,
fun.
and you're having fun. Like there, it may seem like that's the same. You can get bogged down by all the things you have to learn and all the things you have to keep up with, all those things. But there's always a way. Even some people, like when I looked at the CISO job, I was like, this is going to be so boring. I'm going to be like just doing meetings all the time, which I do have to do meetings, but
Absolutely.
I'm also the CISO. So if I want to jump in and get my hands dirty, I can jump in and get my hands dirty.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. I wish it
You,
was actually chief hacking officer because that's the coolest title ever.
when you
But
run your own companies, you can give yourself whatever title you want
exactly,
to.
exactly. But there's definitely ways to find ways to keep it lively, have fun, right? Be that person.
Well,
Yeah.
I find for me, like, so now I run, two cybersecurity companies. I have probably 8 or 9 other businesses that aren't necessarily in cybersecurity. So like serial entrepreneur, I guess at this point, love creating businesses and doing things that I enjoy doing. So like I have a basketball training facility that augments technology and for kids, and the reason I
Wow.
built it is because there wasn't anything around here. My kids love basketball. So I'm like, well, hey, I'm going to build a training facility for kids and my kids will get to enjoy it as well. So, I find what I like to do and I go all in on it. And I think the biggest thing for me, like running 2 large cybersecurity companies and why I'm still having so much fun and excitement is I get to see so many brilliant people come in and I learn from them and I get to hop on engagements whenever I want to. I'll tell you a story of one of our consultants that came in and his name's Luke. And it's an interesting story about success and kind of getting into this industry. So we have a contact us page on Trusted Tech, and I still get those emails too. Like my marketing team gets it and everything, but I still see the emails coming in because I want to know what people are saying about us or asking questions on it, or maybe I can help out, right? And so we got a message from Luke's at the time fiance, and she said, "Hey, my husband's really interested in cybersecurity. He's a web developer, but he's doing like CTFs at night and just wants to know. I was wondering if somebody from Trusted Tech would speak to him that talked about how he can kind of bridge over into cybersecurity, and learn more." And I was like, sure. So I looked at them, like, sure, I'll be happy to speak to Luke. And so it was a surprise, and so we hop on this Zoom call. And his fiance is on there, and then Luke gets on. And is like, "Oh my God, it's Dave Kennedy. He's on this call. What's going on?" And so we start talking through, and you could tell Luke had made cybersecurity his hobby because he was doing capture the flags. He was online publishing code. He was learning all about it. He was giving everything he possibly could because he loved cybersecurity. He loved web development, but he knew cybersecurity was his home, right? And so I start talking to this kid, and I'm like, man, he's actually really smart and he already knows a lot of cybersecurity. I'm like, well, why don't you talk to our head of software, security, Scott White. And so, I was like, Scott, just talk to this kid. He seems like he'd be really good. And we're always looking for application security folks. So you never know.
Yeah.
And Scott talks to me. He's like, oh my God, this guy's really good. And so we ended up hiring him off of that. Right. And he comes in and literally, within a year, he gets promoted to a senior security consultant. He's one of our top application security folks. He's, cybersecurity is his career, and he's one of the top folks we have here at Trusted Sec. So, it's like that type of passion you can't teach to people, right? If you have that passion and that drive, you will be successful in cybersecurity. But here's the difference. Like college degrees are great. I love them. I'm so glad that we have cybersecurity training courses that are teaching kids how to do cybersecurity. But if you just have a degree, does that differentiate you from everybody else? Well, no, not necessarily. So you have to go above and beyond that other person that has a degree as well, doing CTFs, publishing GitHub pages. It doesn't have to be anything revolutionary. It doesn't have to be like, hey, you found a massive kernel 0 day and all this. It doesn't have to be like groundbreaking material, but things that you've learned, your experiences are unique to you. And if you struggle with something, by you publishing that blog or publishing that code to make things easier for somebody else, that shows commitment, that shows hobby, that shows you can figure things out. And that will differentiate you from other people in this industry. And I want to hit on one of the biggest challenges that we have in cybersecurity today. Like, to me, this is the most fundamental problem we have today is that, they always talk about how cybersecurity needs so many people to fill. Like there's like a deficit of like 700,000 jobs in cybersecurity.
Right.
Well, that may be true. I think that number is a little bit overinflated, but I think what they're saying though is they need qualified people today that can fill those roles that already have experience to do those positions. So whether that's detection engineering, threat hunting, incident response, offensive security, penetration testing, whatever, they're looking for experienced people already. So a lot of kids coming out of college are in this really interesting gray area where they have, the the foundational components to be in cybersecurity, but they're missing that experience gap to be able to have that applied learning to then jump into a position that's already looking for a position. So, we need to do better to fix that in this industry, to have better internship programs. And that's what we started creating here at Trusted Tech. We have an internship program here. And I can talk a little bit more about that. We built a cybersecurity program for a poverty-stricken inner city school here in Cleveland, where we built their K-12 cybersecurity program, where they basically go through 3 years of high school training that helps them get scholarship opportunities to go to college and get those, or directly into internship programs here at Trusted Tech. And so, we got to be able to bridge that gap of experience. And I really implore a lot of companies to have those internship programs to develop these kids. Because I would tell you, these kids that are coming out of school today are so much damn smarter than all of us. They're immersed in technology. They understand technology. Mm-hmm. They're way faster at learning than we were. They're doing things in a different way that we didn't think about because they have other tools and technology, or they're leveraging AI in a different way. We have to foster that creativity coming into this industry, and it's a big problem that we face today.
Absolutely. I agree with you 110%. And that was a cool story you shared there, because we have seen it. We have been trying to hire a full-time SOC analyst multiple times, and we end up going with someone who has zero experience, but you can just tell, like, they've been building a lab, they've been doing try hack me stuff. They are living, breathing cybersecurity, and they may be working at Amazon delivering packages just to pay the bills, but they're trying to break into cybersecurity. And we have given them a chance because we just see the love for it, and they've been killers. They've been just killing it. And we're happy to be a stepping stone in their careers, and then see them move on and go work at places like NVIDIA and you name it. So it's
that's the way to do it. Definitely. You're forging the careers for the next generation of people that are going to run this industry. And it's like, if we can't get them to the jobs, we're going to have an even more serious problem moving forward. You look at the innovation that's happening right now with machine learning and artificial intelligence. That's not going to replace jobs. In fact, it's going to increase the demand for people that are more skilled in those areas to be able to augment those technologies to integrate into the technologies that we have today and tomorrow. And so, it's like, we need expertise in these emerging technologies, whether it's cryptocurrency or machine learning or artificial intelligence. And, a lot of folks aren't really looking at that right now. And it's going to be a problem, and it's going to continue to be a problem until we can start to get, these younger kids, the ability to go into these jobs, to learn from and give them the opportunity. We have a what we call our junior program here at Trusted Tech. And we take folks that don't have experience, haven't worked a consulting job or a formal job, and we interview folks, and we look for those kids that have the passion, and they go into our training program. And it's a 6 to 8 month process where we have a dedicated instructor. His name's Jason Ashton, phenomenal resource, hands-on practitioner, consultant, that comes in and trains them for the next 8 months on everything that they're going to know to be a consultant, everything from reporting to customer skills to all the technical components. Then they start to run shadow engagements with our consultants and get paired with our consultants. So they're now actually on engagements. And then eventually they go into the consulting pool, and they work for us, and they do great. A couple of my friends I've been able to give positions. And I had a friend who I'll just say his hacker handle is Cobra. And so we used to play Halo together all the time. And Cobra was a bank teller. And I talk to him all the time online. We play Destiny and everything else together. We do raids together. Phenomenal person. I could tell he was super smart, super brilliant. And he was always the one that was figuring out the glitches to launch you across the map, so we didn't have to fight all the damn mobs.
He was that guy in Halo 2 that was spinning the flying Warhog.
That's right. He's the guy that would figure all that. Spend hours just perfecting this one. I remember there's this one raid in Destiny, and there was this long ass bridge you had to go through. It would take us 2 hours to complete.
Oh, and you figure out a way to
bridge.
I know this bridge. I'm thinking of it right now. You figure out a way to
chop across the whole thing.
Yeah.
So that then we'd all spawn in, and we skip 2 hours of BS and then get the loot. So Cobra was awesome. And I remember one time, he was helping me out, taking his own personal time to help me out through this raid. And I was like, "Hey man, I really appreciate it." And I was like, "You should have a knock on the door in about 5 minutes." He's like, "What do you mean?" He's like, and so I delivered. He was talking about he was hungry, and so I delivered pizza to his house. And he's like, "Well, first of all, how'd you find my address?" I'm like, "Dude, I'm a hacker. First of all, second, thank you so much." And so we became good friends online, and he was asking me more of career options. He's like, "Hey, I want to get into cybersecurity. What do you think?" And I mentored him a bit, talked him through it. And as he's going through the class, he'd always ask questions. And I always have we always have this one joke with us. It's always called, but did you check migrating the process? No matter what we're talking about, did you migrate the process? Because he was going through all this stuff, and I told him to migrate the process. We didn't migrate the process to a system to get to dump the stamp database. Yeah. And so eventually went to the school, and I eventually hired him here, and he's now doing amazing. He's a consultant. He runs his own engagements, everything else. Have another friend that was a personal trainer of my kids that I became good friends with that now is going through our junior program right now through cybersecurity. But we try to put through, anywhere between 8 to 10 folks through this program. It's not just friends. We interview folks that are going through college degrees and have a good understanding of cybersecurity. We have folks that I hired that, start off in IT for a little bit to get a more of a networking foundational background that eventually go into the junior program. So we're continuously trying to funnel folks through, to get them experiences, and, hopefully they stay here for a long time, but we're also happy with them being a stepping stone to the rest of their career and whatever they do. And they're always welcome back too. So we have folks that have left and come back, and it's great. So,
yeah. Now a junior program, that is a cool, you guys are doing it right. And you just need to get that other companies to do more of that. Like, hey, you can do this. And they don't have to be perfect when they get here, build that training program.
And that's my ultimate goal. So like, as Trusted Sec has grown, I'm working with, so now that we have these K-12 cybersecurity programs, and then these college programs we're partnering with, so we're starting to partner with a lot of other colleges. My goal is, and this is hopefully something my goal is to have this done in 2025 and have a program director for this. But my goal is to be able to take that junior program and expand it to where we're training, let's just say 50 to 100 kids through our program. And we partner, we work with 3 of the Fortune 5, 70% of the Fortune 1000 companies out there, partner with all of our customers to then, once they're already trained by Trusted Sec and they've gone through like an accreditation process through Trusted Sec, we can then place them in positions because they now have all that hands-on training from one of the best cybersecurity companies in the world,
right?
Into their facilities. So that's my ultimate goal, is to be able to get like 50 to 100 people through this program, go through some sort of Trusted Sec accreditation, go through college, get your college degree, come through here, get hands-on. And now you're in that workforce, so we're fixing that big gap, and that's ultimately my goal of like what I want to accomplish with Trusted. We're just the ones that are fixing that bridge and that gap, and we're placing them out in companies that can handle 10 kids coming in, or 5 kids or 3 kids, whatever it ends up being, into those positions. And I've already talked to probably 50 different companies, and they're all super interested.
Well, we would be happy to partner with you, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
When we built the SOC, it was like, hey, we're going to partner with all these companies, but it's actually never really become a thing. Really, it becomes a thing where I like just know people. Like, I've got a student right now who's graduating next semester. He's a killer. And I'm like, dude, they should be beating down your door. Yeah. But sometimes it's just who you know, even though he's got a good resume, good experience, you just got to make those connections.
Yeah.
So no, that's, you're on the same wavelength. This is how we think about things, is like building up this community, building up these people, giving them opportunities. And I love it. Like, we've had like 50 students come through our SOC and go on and kill it. They're killers out there. Yeah, they're killers. Yeah, awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, no, that's great. So we kind of, we had some questions around Trusted Sec, and kind of how you those two companies, Binary Defense, came to be. You kind of answer some of that a little bit, so we can move on. So what about DerbyCon and just building a community around kind of cybersecurity and that?
Starting Trusted Sec and Binary Defense was an interesting one, because for anybody that wants to start a business, go and do it. And do it early and figure it out. I had no idea what I was doing at all. I had no idea how to register an LLC. I had no idea that I needed cyber liability insurance. I had no idea how to do taxes. I had no idea how to do payroll. I had no idea how to do any of this stuff, right? And I will say, my wife, Erin, is such an amazing human being. We're such a perfect yin and yang in a good way. Mm. So I'm really good at communicating to people, the technical work, being a subject matter expert. Erin's amazing at the back end systems, being able to do the finance components, the taxes, the payroll, so she's our CFO and head of finance. And she's got a team now. We didn't have a team. We literally started in the basement of our house. I had 4 months of rent in the bank, and if things didn't go well, I was going to foreclose on our house. And so, I went from, a chief security officer for Diebold, where I was doing extremely well at a very young age, had a great team, everything was going well, to coming home and saying, hey, I think I want to leave this perfectly amazing job, and started coming to the basement of our house. And it was the time to do it. I look back at that, Dave, I'm like, dude, you were effing crazy. Like, what the hell were you thinking? Like, you had a perfectly great job and you decided you were going to go sit in the basement of your house and start a company. Thank God I did that. Thank God Crazy Dave came out at that point in time, because, now we got 350 employees over the world. But, it's one of those things where it's like, I'm so glad I did it, but I'm terrified of it now, of having to do that. But, you learn as you go along, you build things as you go along. But here's the thing, again, if you have good karma and you do things the right way, good things happen, right? So we're always the type of company that's like, we will always do things the right way. We take care of our people. Like, if you look at consulting, generally it's a 30% churn rate or attrition rate of your employees, like, because it's just a taxing job. I mean, we're not even at 1% here, and it's unusual for us to lose folks, so we take care of our people. We take as much stress out as possible, and people know throughout our whole company, like, listen, if you're stressed out, you have too much work, let us know. We'll take you off of engagements so you can catch up and relax a little bit, and everything else. It's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength to be able to admit, hey, I bit off too much I can chew, or things are going on personally in my life, I need to take a break. No problem. Like, we're really accepting of that. And so, I started Trusted Sec, and then eventually started Binary Defense, a couple years later. And we also started DerbyCon. And DerbyCon was one of my favorite conferences. It still is. You talk to folks that went to DerbyCon, like, that was the best conference that was ever made. That's great. That's great to hear. Like, hey, you put on a great thing. But what was different about DerbyCon, the story of DerbyCon is actually interesting, because I was just at Churchill Downs in Kentucky, and that's actually where DerbyCon beta started at. So Adrian, or Iron Geek, he was having a full day training class and he wanted to put on a free training class for Metasploit at the time. And he asked me if I would teach a half a day of it. And I was like, sure, no problem. So we came down there, and I taught a whole half day free for anybody that wanted to come in there to learn about exploit development and stuff like that. And the whole thing sold out completely. Like, we had like 100 people there. And so, I left that day. I'm like, man, we were at a pizza place right across the street. And I was like, man, we should start a conference here. It'd be really cool to have like a low cost entry, cybersecurity conference that we can throw on. And it was like crazy, because like, we all had our different like skill sets. Like, again, I'm good at the front face of everything, and kind of being, hey, what would be good for a talk selection and tracks and things like that. Martin, who helped start DerbyCon, he was a roadie and a sound person for bands. So we threw like massive band parties, and he knew how to get a hold of them and throw like these, get bands. We had, Offspring and Wu-Tang and Vanilla Ice and Crystal Method and Sublime, and we threw these massive, crazy ass parties. And it's crazy, because like, I'm in the back partying with Wu-Tang, after the shows. I'm like, what the hell happened here? Like, like, what's going on? I'm like literally partying with Wu-Tang right now. This is insane. And awesome. So but the whole premise of DerbyCon was creating affordable, easy to come into training and cybersecurity conferences that was for everybody. And we had like multiple tracks. We had my favorite track actually was the new to InfoSec track. And the prerequisite was you cannot have given a talk before in the past. And so we had folks that had never given a talk before giving 30-minute presentations, about, whatever they learned. And it was great. I learned so much. Again, new generation, new kids coming in, getting the opportunity to speak at one of these largest prolific, cybersecurity conferences. And it was just a great time. We ran, I think, 9 years. We'd sell out within like 5 seconds. It was crazy. And, eventually it became much more of a job than it was building the conference, because, when you start off with 500 folks, that's manageable. Yeah. When you're selling out, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 tickets in 5 seconds, now it's an event, and you have to deal so much. So like, we'd start DerbyCon, we finished DerbyCon, and then a week later we'd start planning again. And I was like, okay, this is too much. So then we just, decided to kind of cut cords and say, hey, we did our thing. We had a lot of great folks. We had a lot of great people, gave people a lot of opportunity. And I still have people come up to me today saying, DerbyCon changed my life. It got me into cybersecurity. It did this, it did that. One of my favorite ones that I remember is Matthew Graber, Manifestation, who's one of the most like prolific security researchers out there. Just brilliant. You look up Matt's stuff, and Matt was an amazing person. And Matt came up to me at DerbyCon. He's like, hey, I'm thinking about bridging into cybersecurity. What do you think? And what would you do? And lo and behold, he becomes Matt Graber, like the guy that like is one of the best security researchers out there. And so, it's like, I was instrumental in his career and his development, and as well as a number of others. And a lot of folks that we have here at Trusted Sec, their career started at DerbyCon. It started, attending the conference, or speaking at the conference, things like that. So it's just been really awesome. That it was a great time, had a lot of fun, changed a lot of lives, built an amazing community. And a lot of conferences today are forged off of DerbyCon. You look at Wild West Hacking Fest,
Yeah.
John wanted to create the same type of community and spirit that we had at DerbyCon, so we created Wild West Hacking Fest. You look at what you have with SaintCon. SaintCon's been running, I think, longer than DerbyCon was, and has a very similar type of community, amazing conference out there in Utah. And so you see these pockets of community that are still very much vibrant and alive, that are all about teaching the next generation of kids, sharing their research and knowledge, doing things differently, and collectively coming together to figure out this problem. And it's really awesome.
Yeah. Back to what we were saying, just helping others, right? Looking for ways to help others.
What it was about. And we would donate, we would raise more money for charity than any other conference period. So like we were raising, $30,000, $40,000 a conference for various charities. Like we helped the Puerto Rico event. We were flying in food and, radios and batteries and things like that to there. We're doing amazing things, just helping people out that were outside of cybersecurity too. It was just really awesome altogether.
Yeah. Well, we're getting close to the end, and I know you've got to bounce here in a few, but just wanted to, I guess, really wrap it. I mean, we've hit so many good things on. There's definitely some gold nuggets here for people that are looking to get into cybersecurity or level up. Is there anything there that you want to share that you haven't already? Like, hey, when people come to you and they're asking these questions, what kind of advice do you give them?
Yeah, I think hitting on some of the things that we talked about around, figuring things out on your own, being able to like, I'll tell you, figuring out something on your own is extremely difficult and frustrating. If you've ever done it before, especially like, I remember I was there was a FRAC article on circumventing data execution prevention. And it was an experimental article. It didn't have a lot of detail to it of how to do it, but it said it should be possible to bypass data execution prevention if you do these types of things. And I was really fascinated about it. So I wrote one of the first depth bypass exploits, but I spent like 2 weeks in my basement learning the internals of Windows, assembly, everything else. I already knew assembly at the time, but I was learning more of the Windows internals and how depth worked and how Stack Overflows and everything worked. And I remember racking my brain around this, and I couldn't figure it out. And it was the most frustrating thing ever. I'm like, man, I suck. I'm just dumb. I can't figure this out. And I went through like these different stages of denial, but eventually, 2 weeks later, I was able to write one of the first exploits to circumvent data execution prevention, right? And it eventually became what's known today as return-oriented programming, or ROP gadgets. And I was doing that, early on before ROP gadgets were a thing. And there was no book on it. There's no way of reading saying, hey, this is how you do it. There's no tool to help you build it together. You had to do it on yourself. And I remember I had like thousands of like sheets of paper on my desk, and just handwritten assembly instructions, like just doing the math and everything else to figure this out. And eventually I wrote this exploit, right? But it's those types of hurdles, the frustrations that make you so much better, because now you understand that subject, and you're really good at it, and you build on that knowledge. And you hit something earlier, John, around there's so much to learn in this industry, and that's true, but you're never going to know everything. So remember that. And remember that it's all about building blocks and gradually going and learning as you go and getting better with that. The PowerShell stuff, when PowerShell first came out, I'm known as the father of PowerShell security. That came from Jeff Snover, who wrote PowerShell. Jeff Snover, who wrote PowerShell, considers me the father of PowerShell security, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But that came out, and it was a brand new programming language. I was like, oh, cool. I bet we could write a bunch of exploits for this. And I gave the first ever PowerShell security talk to my buddy Josh at DEF CON. It was called PowerShell OMFG. And it was like the power of PowerShell from an offensive perspective, right? And so it's like doing creative things, learning new things, doing things differently that hasn't been done before. And most importantly, knowing that you can do it. I remember when I went to my first DEF CON, I saw like HD Moore and Fedor and Zimmerman and the Cult of Dead Cows and the Shmoo Group, all these like prolific hackers that, this industry is essentially built off of, right? Their early entry into all of this really kind of started the whole cybersecurity industry. And I remember looking at them like, these guys are just like savants, or just so genius. There's no way I'll ever be like that. So, but the truth of the matter is, you can. It's not anybody can learn this industry, come in this industry and be successful at it. If you just apply yourself, you go through those frustration levels, you do the things that is good for you to learn and to do your tasks and to finish it and to build yourself up. And then from there, success comes from that.
Very cool. Yeah. Ask for help too. You don't have to be
help.
on your own.
Nope.
It's okay. You're going to run into those frustrations for sure. But man, there's so many more resources today than there were when I first started getting into this. So there's a lot of help out there, but you will run into those same roadblocks no matter what it is. Even if you don't solve it all, you just say, hey, this is this cool thing I learned, right? That you can share.
Share it.
Yeah.
Share it. Share your knowledge with anybody and everybody, and ask for help. That they're
absolutely.
I learned so much from other people. I got. Thank God I had Mutts around with me. HD Moore. I remember I wrote an exploit. I wrote an exploit for Metasploit, and it was an Internet Explorer 0 day at the time, a memory corruption flaw, and I spent so much time making sure that it was like, because I wasn't a big fan of Ruby, and I didn't know Ruby that well. I was a Python, C, C++ assembly guy, and I remember writing this exploit, and I sent it over to HD, and I was so paranoid because I was like, HD's going to tell me this sucks. It worked. But, HD's going to tell me it sucks. Well, so I sent it to HD, and like an hour later, he sends it back. He's like, hey, dude, this looks really great. Nice job. Just made a couple changes. And then I looked at the code, and the whole thing was completely rewritten. So, you always can learn from other people and to do better things, and always ask folks that know what they're doing, or at least, have a good understanding of it for their perspective, because it can help you build on what you need to learn. I learned a lot from HD and a bunch of other folks in this industry to really get me where I'm at. My good buddy, who unfortunately passed away last year, Kevin Mitnick, was one of my best friends in this industry. Learned so much from him, and you learn so many good folks, and this industry is just filled with just amazing people that are willing to help you, which is, I think, unique to any other industry, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah. One last thing I want to ask you, because if you can see the audio, Dave's traps are showing out in the back. So anything you want to say about We Hack Health? Because I'm a follower. I follow some of the stuff you're posting. So anything you want to say about that program initiative? Yeah.
Yeah. So check us out, hackingyourhealth.com. And then we have a podcast. It's called Hacking Your Health, the Hacking Your Health podcast. It's weekly, and it's me and my personal trainer, Ben, and we just talk about what you can do. I used to be extremely overweight. I was in the obese cycle. I wasn't sleeping a lot. I drink alcohol. Still drink alcohol here and there, just, more in moderation. But it's like you get into that cycle of like, cybersecurity, you're sitting in front of your desk for 12 hours, 15 hours, sometimes 20 hours, sometimes 2 days. And so I really decided, my health was dwindling down. I was tired all the time, and I decided to take control of it. And so now I'm in a regimen where, I went all in on this one too. And, research how my body works, calories, how you burn calories, how you build muscle. And I've really been able to transform myself. But most importantly, I'm the healthiest that I've ever been. I have the most energy for my family, my kids. I, went from, barely being able to get off the couch to, really helping my kids and being a coach and instructor for my kids' basketball teams and everything else. So, it's really, again, about the time you put into yourself is equally important to the time that you do other things. And remember, your job is important, but your health, your life, everything else, your family, that comes number one, no matter what.
Absolutely. Awesome.
Yeah.
Dave, this has been amazing. You basically ran the podcast. We didn't have to do anything.
You guys did great. Thank you so much for having me. Seriously.
You're awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. Take care.